You're not here by accident. What you're about to hear was meant to find you. This is Mysteries Unveiled by Dino, where every tale is born from shadows and written in silence. Chapter 1. The Shattered Mirror in Her Eyes. The first thing she noticed was the scent. Antiseptic, sterile, suffocating. The fluorescent light above buzzed like a trapped insect, flickering in time with the throbbing in her skull. Where am I? Her fingers twitched against stiff hospital sheets. A dull ache radiated from her temple, pulsing with every shallow breath. When she forced her eyes open, the world blurred into fractured shapes, white walls, a half-drawn curtain, the silhouette of a man standing by the window. Ah, you're awake. The voice was smooth, deliberate. A doctor's cadence, but something lurked beneath, a whisper of something darker, something interested. She tried to speak, but her throat was raw. The man stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum. His face came into focus, sharp jawline, dark eyes that didn't quite reflect the light, a smile that didn't reach them. "Don't force yourself," he said, tilting his head. "You were in an accident. Do you remember anything?" Accident. Her mind clawed at the word, but there was nothing, just a void where memories should have been. Panic slithered up her spine. Her voice cracked. "Who am I?" The doctor's smile didn't waver. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small digital camera, her camera, she realized instinctively, and placed it on the bedside table. "You're Linnea Hale, a photographer." His thumb brushed over the camera's lens, almost possessive. "And I'm Dr. Daniel Voss, your therapist." Therapist. Her gaze flickered to the camera. A single photo was displayed on the screen, a blurred image of a rain-smeared window, a shadowy figure just beyond the glass. Something about it made her stomach twist. "You had this with you when they brought you in," he continued. "Curious, isn't it? The last thing you held onto." She reached for it, but a sharp pain shot through her wrist. A bandage peeked out from under her sleeve, not from the accident, she realized. The edges were too precise, the wound too neat. Dr. Voss followed her gaze. His fingers grazed her pulse point, feather-light. "Be careful," he murmured. "Some mirrors are better left broken." A chill dripped down her spine, because for the first time she noticed the way his reflection in the window didn't blink when he did. Chapter 2. The Stranger Who Feels Familiar. The photograph trembled in Linnea's hands. The woman in the image was undeniably her. Same sharp cheekbones, same way she tilted her head when laughing. But the man holding her? That wasn't Dr. Voss. The stranger in the photo had softer features, a warmth in his eyes that Daniel Voss had never possessed. Yet the doctor leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, watching her reaction like a predator gauging prey. "You don't remember us," he said, not a question. Linnea's throat tightened. "This isn't you." A slow, calculated blink. Then he reached into his desk drawer and slid out a leather-bound journal. Her journal, he claimed, flipping to a dog-eared page. "Daniel kissed me today by the old bridge. I've never felt so consumed." The handwriting almost looked like hers. Almost. But the slant of the letters was wrong, the pressure of the pen too even. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "This doesn't make sense." "Memory loss is unpredictable," he said smoothly, "especially after trauma." Trauma. The words slithered between them. She glanced at the camera beside her, her only tether to a past she couldn't recall. "Why would I have a photo of someone else if you were?" "Because you were afraid," he interrupted, voice dropping to a whisper. "Afraid of how much you loved me, so you tried to rewrite us." His fingers brushed hers as he took the photo back, lingering just a second too long. "But I remember everything." A knock at the door. A nurse entered, holding a plastic bag of her belongings. Linnea's breath hitched. Inside was a necklace, a silver locket. She clicked it open, empty, except for a single word etched inside, nearly worn away. "Run!" Dr. Voss's smile didn't falter, but his grip on the journal tightened. "Ah," he said softly, "you always did lose things." Chapter 3. The White Room. The walls were too bright. Linnea blinked against the glare of the overhead lights as she sat across from Dr. Voss in the therapy room. It was always like this. White walls, white floors, even the damn chair was white, like the world had been scrubbed clean of anything real, or like evidence had been erased. "Describe what you see," Voss said, gesturing to the two-way mirror beside them. His voice was calm, practiced. She forced herself to look. At first, Only her own reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, a woman she barely recognized. But then, a flicker. A shadow moved on the other side of the glass. A woman, her mouth pressed into a thin line, her fingers splayed against the mirror like she was trapped. He lies. The woman's lips formed the words soundlessly, her eyes locking onto Linnea's. Linnea jerked back, her chair scraping against the floor. There's someone there. Voss didn't even glance at the mirror. Stress hallucinations aren't uncommon with memory loss, he said, flipping open her file. Your mind is trying to fill the gaps. No, that wasn't a hallucination. That woman had looked terrified. Voss slid a photograph across the table, an old Polaroid of a beach at sunset. Two figures in the distance, their backs turned. You took this, he said, our first trip together. Linnea's fingers hovered over the image. Something was off. The grain, the light, it felt staged, like a scene constructed just for her. Then she noticed it. A reflection in the tide pool at the bottom of the frame. Not two people, three. And the third figure, tall, watching from the shadows, was unmistakably Voss. Her stomach twisted. This isn't real. Voss sighed, as if disappointed. He reached into his pocket and pressed a button on a small remote. The lights in the observation room behind the mirror flicked on, revealing empty space. No woman, no handprints. Just an empty white box. Your mind is playing tricks on you, Linnea, he murmured. But don't worry. I'll help you separate what's real from what's not. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. Starting with the fact that you were never alone on that beach. Chapter 5. The Stranger in the Glass. The fingerprint glistened under the morning light, a perfect, smudged spiral on the bathroom mirror. Linnea pressed her own finger against it, too large to be hers, too real to ignore. She grabbed her camera and scrolled back to last night's photos, the shadowy figure in the shower, the face at the window. Zooming in on the reflection of the hand gripping the curtain, she traced the ridges of its fingertips against the fogged glass. Not Voss! Her hands shook as she pulled up the contact sheet he'd sent. The blurred figure in those old photos stood slightly differently. Shoulders hunched, head tilted at an odd angle. The stance was familiar, but she couldn't place it. Until she saw the necklace. In one of the negatives, the figure's collar had shifted, revealing a thin silver chain. The same one she'd found in her hospital bag. The same one etched with "Run." A knock at her apartment door shattered her thoughts. Linnea? Voss's voice, smooth as oiled glass. You missed our session. She shoved the camera under a pile of clothes just as the door creaked open. Since when had she unlocked it? And Voss stepped inside, his polished shoes silent on the hardwood. His gaze landed on the bathroom mirror, on the fingerprint. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. Interesting, he murmured, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket. He wiped the mark away with a single, practiced motion. You should be more careful. Dust here can play tricks. Linnea's pulse pounded in her throat. Who was in my apartment last night? Voss stilled. Then he smiled, slow, deliberate, and reached into his coat. He laid a photograph on the table between them. A young man, mid-20s, dark hair falling into his eyes. His smile was warm, but his knuckles were bruised. His name was Eli. Voss said, Your real ex-boyfriend. Linnea's breath caught. The man in the photo, he was the figure in the negatives. Voss leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Eli's the one who caused your accident. And if you keep looking for him, his fingers brushed the camera hidden beneath her clothes. You'll end up just like him. Chapter 6. The Gentle Lie. The scream echoed in Linnea's skull long after the voice memo ended. Find the bridge. She played it again. Fingers icy against the camera's controls. Timestamp? Hours after she'd fallen asleep. The scream was raw, guttural, cut off mid-breath, like someone had slammed a hand over the man's mouth. Eli's voice. She knew it, same way she knew the metallic taste in her mouth wasn't just from panic. She leaned over the sink and spat. A single silver thread glistened in the porcelain. No, 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 no. Her hands fumbled for the necklace. Had Ely left it as a warning? A breadcrumb trail to what really happened? The camera screen flickered. She hadn't touched it. A new photo loaded. A close-up of a journal page, jagged, desperate handwriting. He says the bridge will fix me, but I think it's where he takes the ones who remember too much. Signed with a single initial, E. Linnea's breath shortened. Her lungs felt too small. She yanked open her own journal, the one Voss had given her, the one written in almost her handwriting. Page 87. A passage about some special place by the river, where she and Voss had supposedly shared their first kiss. The ink felt raised, like it had been traced. The paper warped beneath her fingers. She held the page to the light. And beneath the fake memory, faint but unmistakable, another sentence bled through. Don't go to the bridge, he's waiting. The doorbell rang. Linnea froze, journal still in her hands. Heartbeat like a jackhammer in her ears, she crept to the peephole. A delivery man stood holding a box, no uniform, no logo, just a plain brown package. Sign here, he said when she cracked the door open. Her name was already on the clipboard, in her handwriting. The box held three things. One, a Polaroid of the bridge, wooden, half-rotten, one railing snapped clean off. Two, a key, old brass stamped with the number 214. Three, a lock of dark hair tied with silver wire. At the bottom of the box, scrawled in fresh, hurried ink, "Tonight, come alone, or he'll know." Linnea backed away slowly. Her eyes caught the hallway mirror. And her reflection didn't move with her. It just smiled. Chapter 7. Self-Defense Reflex. The motel room reeked of copper and ammonia, like death had been marinating in the air for days. Linnea's fingers left slick, damp prints on the doorknob as she pushed inside. The key, too pressed sharp against her palm, biting through the skin. The walls were a sick collage, a grotesque mosaic of photographs pinned with surgical precision. Her face, her smile, her wide, terrified eyes in some, glassy and empty in others. But none of them were her, because the woman in the photos, though a perfect twin, wore clothes Linnea would never touch, kissed cheeks she didn't know, held hands with strangers whose names tasted like burnt ash whenever she tried to say them aloud. At the center, like a crown of cruelty, a yellowed newspaper clipping screamed in bold, "Local man missing after girlfriend's tragic accident." Eli's grainy face stared back, arm wrapped around a woman who was almost Linnea. Same dark hair, same sharp collarbones. But this woman's wrists were ringed with bruises, the imprint of fingers like chains of pain. Mira Lane, the caption read. Recovering after fall from Blackwood Bridge. Linnea's vision tunneled. Mira. The name slithered through her mind like a venomous snake. Somewhere in the silence, a faucet dripped, slow and steady. Drip. Mira. Lane. Drip. Liar. She staggered to the bathroom, bile rising fast. The mirror was shattered, cracks spiderwebbing out from a single bullet hole. Taped to the glass in that same jagged handwriting, a note. He'll make you forget, fight back. Something shiny caught her eye in the sink. A scalpel, curled around its handle, a silver chain twinned to hers. But this locket wasn't empty. Inside, a tiny photo showed Eli and Mira locked in an embrace, his lips pressed tenderly to her forehead. Linnea tilted the locket to the light. The image twisted. Mira's eyes were gouged out, dark, empty voids, and in that black mirror reflected, smiling. A floorboard creaked behind her. Linnea whipped around, scalpel raised like a weapon forged in desperation. The bedroom was empty, but on the bed, where nothing had been seconds ago, lay her camera. The display blinked. One new photo. She knew what it was before she touched it. The bridge at night. Mira's broken body sprawled on the rocks below. And standing over her, scalpel glinting, Linnea's own face streaked with tears. Chapter 8. The Edge of a Personality. The scalpel slipped from Linnea's fingers, clattering like a death knell onto the floor between her and Voss. His bare hands rested on his knees, knuckles scarred, skin mottled with ancient burns, just like Eli's. Sleepwalking is a common symptom of repressed trauma, Voss said, voice syrup-thick with fake concern. His eyes never left hers as he reached into his pocket and slid a Polaroid across the coffee table. Her stomach twisted into a knot when she saw it. Herself, eyes closed, face slack like a doll's, scalpel pressed beneath her jaw. And behind her, Voss, hands wrapped around hers, lips parted, whispering instructions. The timestamp was cruel, 3:17 a.m. Same time as Eli's scream. "This isn't me," Linnea whispered, voice barely a breath. Voss tilted his head, slow and deliberate. "Isn't it?" A knock shattered the thick silence. The door opened to a woman, mid-30s, sharp eyes, badge clipped to her belt. Detective Ava Cole. "Linnea Hale?" Her gaze flicked over to Voss, then back. I need to ask you some questions about Mira Lane. Voss's smile didn't falter, but his fingers twitched like a cornered animal. My patient isn't well enough. I remember her, Linnea blurted out. The room froze. Detective Cole stepped inside, closing the door behind her. You two were roommates before the accident, before she died. She pulled a photo from her jacket. Mira and Linnea, arms slung around each other, grinning at some private joke. Linnea's throat tightened. She'd never seen this woman before in her life. And yet, her fingers knew the texture of Mira's sweater in the photo. Her muscles remembered Mira's weight leaning on her. This is highly inappropriate. Linnea has no memory of. Funny thing, Cole cut him off. Mira's last journal entry mentioned you, doctor, said you were experimenting on her. She turned to Linnea. And that you tried to warn her. A flash burst behind Linnea's eyes, Mira sobbing at the kitchen table. He's changing my memories. Her own hand stuffing a necklace into an envelope. Run, Mira, please. The vision shattered as Voss grabbed her wrist, cold steel clutching tight. We're done here. But Linnea was already pulling free, snatching the detective's card from her hand. Because in the hallway mirror's reflection, she saw it. Detective Cole's lips moving silently as Voss turned away. He's lying. Meet me at the bridge tonight. And behind them both, faint and ghostly in the glass, Mira's reflection, mouthing the same words. Chapter 9. The Photograph That Never Existed. The journal pages smelled like old ink and something bitter, almonds and panic. Linnea spread them across her kitchen table under the sickly yellow glow of a single bulb. The words blurred and swam in her tired eyes. He calls it soul grafting, stealing memories from one mind and stitching them into another. But the host always fights back. That's why the bridge was necessary, why the fall had to look like an accident. Her fingers trembled as she flipped the page. If you're reading this, Linnea, it means he's already started rewriting you with pieces of me. Check your camera. The proof is in the photos you don't remember taking. The camera felt heavy in her hands, a lead weight anchoring her to a nightmare. She scrolled past recent shots, the bridge, the motel, Eli's scream frozen in pixelated agony, until she reached older files. There, a series dated 6 months before her accident. Herself and Voss at a cafe. Herself and Voss by a Christmas tree. Herself and Voss in front of Blackwood Bridge, his arm tight around her waist. Except, she'd never been to that cafe. She hated Christmas. And the sweater she wore in the bridge photo was Mira's favorite, the one with the loose thread on the left sleeve. Linnea's breath hitched. She zoomed in on the bridge photo, eyes locked on their reflections in the water below. Voss's reflection grinned up at her like a predator. Hers vanished. A sharp knock at the window made her flinch back. Detective Cole stood outside, face ghostly pale under the street lamp. She mouthed 2 words. They're coming. Tires screeched in the distance. Linnea barely had time to shove the pages into her jacket before Cole yanked her out into the cold night. Voss reported you as a danger to yourself, Cole hissed, dragging her toward an unmarked car. He has the paperwork to commit you by morning. Linnea clutched the camera like a talisman. Why are you helping me? Cole's grip tightened. Because Mira was my sister. The car door slammed shut. As they sped away, Linnea glanced back at her apartment, just in time to see Voss step out of the shadows, a syringe catching the streetlight. And beside him, a figure in a hoodie, face swallowed by darkness, but stands painfully familiar. Eli, alive, watching, waiting. Chapter 10. The Third Perspective. The world slammed back in jagged shards. First, the sting of leather straps biting into her wrists. Then the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights, too bright, too clinical. Finally, the cold press of glass against her cheek as Voss tilted her face toward the mirror. Look closely, he whispered, voice like silk coated in poison. Linnea's reflection stared back, ashen, pupils blown wide from whatever cocktail coursed through her veins. But when she blinked, the reflection didn't. It kept staring. Then it smiled. Not her smile, Mira's. Linnea twisted and thrashed against the restraints, a scream clawing up her throat, raw and desperate. Her camera sat on a metal tray nearby, its screen flickering to life like it had a secret to spill. A silent video played, her own hands, except not really hers, adjusting the lens with unfamiliar grace. Behind her, a 2-way mirror, just like in Voss's therapy room. And beyond that glass, rows of women, all her face, all strapped into identical chairs. Voss caught her gaze, a sick grin spreading. Ah, you found our family album. He tapped the camera, fast-forwarding the footage. Detective Cole, or Dr. Cole. Her badge gleamed differently now, administering injections to the bound women. Memory is just electricity, Voss said, pressing a button. The mirror before Linnea blazed with light, revealing the observation room behind it. Empty, except for one chair, and in it, Eli, alive but not alive, mouth stitched shut with silver wire, fingers twitching in frantic coded bursts against the armrest. Voss leaned close, breath hot and rank on Linnea's ear. Say hello to your first donor. Behind the glass, Eli's bloodshot eyes locked onto hers. His fingers spasmed into a single desperate gesture. 3 taps, a pause, 2 taps. Morse for SOS. The camera's screen flickered again, this time a live feed of the bridge at night. Detective Cole stood at the railing, and beside her, another Linnea, dressed in Mira's clothes, holding a scalpel, smiling. Shh, Chapter 11. The bridge is a door. Smoke clawed at Linnea's throat like it wanted to rip her lungs out. She stumbled through the chaos, alarms screaming like banshees, shadows darting past, orderlies, patients, too many faces that looked just like hers. The key Eli pressed into her palm burned hot, biting into her skin every step she took. The bridge is a door. The whispers swirled around her, overlapping voices that were hers, but not hers. She rounded a corner, slammed into a gurney. On it lay a woman, strapped down, head shaved bald, her own face, her mouth stitched shut with silver wire. The woman's eyes locked onto Linnea's, wild and desperate, fingers twitching at the restraints, the same Morse code Eli had sent. SOS. Then RUN. A hand clamped on Linnea's shoulder. She spun, scalpel raised, Eli, bloodied lips raw from being cut free. Not that way, he rasped, dragging her toward an emergency exit. They're hurting us. Through the smoke, figures moved in perfect sync, orderlies in white masks corralling the fleeing patients, not away, but toward the courtyard, toward a waiting transport van, toward more sterile white rooms. Eli shoved a fire extinguisher into her hands. When I say now, glass shattered above. A figure dropped from the vents, another Linnea, her hospital gown stained with soot, eyes wild and frantic. They lied, the double gasped. The bridge isn't where he takes memories. A dart buried itself deep in her neck. She crumpled. Voss stepped through the haze, tranquilizer gun raised. It's where he burns them, Eli finished grimly. He kicked open the exit door. Now! Linnea smashed the extinguisher at the nearest sprinkler head. A cold torrent burst down, a curtain shielding them from Voss's line of sight. Eli grabbed her hand. They ran past the vans, past the screaming doubles, toward the dark line of trees. Toward the bridge behind them, Voss's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Bring her back before she remembers what's on the other side. The last thing Linnea saw before the forest swallowed them was the sign of the facility, barely visible through the smoke, Blackwood Memory Research Center, and beneath it, smaller, nearly erased, a subsidiary of Voss Dynamics. Chapter 12, carved in the wood. Rain slicked the old bridge, wood groaning under their steps. Linnea's fingers traced the worn carvings, MLEH, rough edges where the knife had slipped. Mira Lane, Eli Harris. Below that, fresh cuts, LHML. The arrow was deep, like someone had stabbed at it over and over. Eli's breath caught. That wasn't here before. The wind howled, dragging voices that didn't belong to the forest. Her camera, still hanging by her neck, buzzed suddenly. The screen flickered alive. A grainy handheld video played. Mira standing right where Linnea was now, back turned. Voss's voice echoed off screen. It has to be you. She'll fight me if I do it. Mira turned. Blood and tears streaked down her face. You promised to erase me first. A hand, Linnea's hand, shoving Mira toward the shattered railing. The video cut to black. Eli snarled like something broken inside. That's not what happened. I was here. She jumped to get away from him. A twig snapped. Detective Cole emerged from the trees, no badge, gloved hands. Correction, she said flatly. She was pushed by the only subject who ever fully accepted Mira's memories. She nodded at Linnea. The camera buzzed again, a new image. Linnea's face bloodied, staring past the frame. Timestamp? The night Mira fell. Eli staggered back, eyes wide. No, that's one of the others. There are no others. Cole pulled a syringe from her pocket. Just the original. The one Voss perfected. Linnea's head throbbed, not a memory, but the shape of one clawing to break free. Mira's hands gripping hers on the bridge, begging. The moment before the fall, the weightless second. Cole stepped forward. He just wants to fix the glitch. The real Linnea Hale is. Eli lunged. Limbs tangled, the syringe skittered across the wet wood. Linnea grabbed it and froze. Because carved under the railing, hidden unless you were falling, was one last message. Look behind you. She spun. Voss stood 3 steps away, a second camera raised, smiling. Say cheese, he said. The flash blinded her. When her vision cleared, she was alone on the bridge. No Eli, no Cole, just the wind, the distant sirens, and the camera in her hands showing a new photo. Herself, eyes wide with terror, reflected in the pupils of someone standing right behind her. Chapter 13. The name that wasn't hers. Fluorescent lights buzzed like pissed-off wasps trapped in glass. Linnea, no, not Linnea, because the damn intake form said Mira Lane, clutched the evidence bag like it was her lifeline. That bag weighed heavier than it should, a scalpel with LH carved into the handle, a silver locket holding a curl of dark hair. A Blackwood patient wristband, blood-stained but still screaming, Mira Lane. The cop across from her smiled. Not a friendly smile. More like a predator watching a cornered animal gasping for air. Welcome back, he said, sliding a file toward her. Inside, the photo was labeled Mira Lane, but it showed Linnea's face. Her own reflection stared back at her from the two-way mirror, but Mira's reflection flickered there instead. This isn't happening, she whispered. The words weren't hers. They tasted like someone else's panic. The officer, badge read Richards, but his eyes? Fucking Blackwood cold. Tap the file. You've been missing for 13 months, Miss Lane, since the night your roommate Linnea Hale pushed you off that bridge. A lie. A goddamn script. She knew it because the camera inside the evidence bag suddenly buzzed awake, its tiny screen glowing through the plastic. A video played. Same interrogation room, years ago. Mira, the real Mira, bruised, shaking, begging Richards to believe her. He shoved a pill into her trembling hand. Voss says this will help you forget. The screen went black. Richards hadn't even blinked. He slid a consent form across the table. Just sign, and we'll take you back to Blackwood. Dr. Voss is very eager to see you. Her hand shook as she grabbed the pen. Then, crash! Shouts. The door slammed open. Ally, gaunt and filthy, mud and motor oil streaked across his clothes, burst in. In his hands, a gasoline can and a lighter. Run, he rasped, eyes locked on She Remembered. Behind him, chaos exploded in the station. Because standing in the lobby, dripping wet, hospital gown plastered to skeletal limbs, was Mira, the real one, and she was holding a gun. Chapter 14. Subject 0. The river swallowed them whole. Icy water clawed at Linnea's lungs as Eli dragged her under, away from the blazing police station, away from the sharp cracks of Mira's gunshots, away from Voss's voice crackling through the radio. Bring me Subject 0 alive. The current spat them out beneath the bridge, the same cursed bridge where Mira had fallen, where Linnea supposedly pushed her, if that damn video was to be believed. Eli hauled her onto the slick rocks, hands shaking like a junkie's. She's real, he gasped. The original Mira. Voss must have kept her. A metallic click cut him off. The camera in Linnea's soaked bag powered on by itself. The display flickered with a new video. A sterile lab. Mira, the real one, skeletal, hair patchy from malnutrition, was strapped to a chair. Voss leaned over her, needle poised, injecting God knows what into her neck as she screamed. You're the blueprint, he crooned like some sick lullaby. We can't have you dying before we perfect the process. Timestamp, yesterday. Eli let out a broken sound. They never let her go. Linnea's hands trembled, the pieces clicking into place. Ugly, sharp truths. Voss hadn't just been jamming Mira's memories into her. No, he was turning her, Linnea, into Mira's replacement. A branch snapped overhead. They froze. On the bridge railing, barely visible through the downpour, stood a figure. Too thin, too still, Mira. Her hospital gown clung to her skeletal frame, the gun dangling from slack fingers. When she spoke, her voice was raw, like a ghost rasp from dice use. Took you long enough to see the strings, Linnea. The way she spat that name, like it was a curse, like it was Voss's name, sent ice down Linnea's spine. Mira raised the gun. Not at them, at her own temple. Stop him, she whispered. Then she stepped backward and let the river take her. Chapter 15. The original. The Polaroid's edges curled in Linnea's shaking hands. Voss's grip on the real Linnea Hale's hair was vicious, knuckles white against the dark strands. But it was her eyes that made bile rise in Linnea's throat, empty, hollow, like a doll's. Eli snatched the photo, breath ragged. This is recent. That means there's another facility, Linnea finished. The river lapped at their feet, whispering secrets against cold rocks. Somewhere downstream, Mira's body should have washed ashore. But it hadn't. Just the gun, just the photo, just the blood-written demand. Come and see what you really are. The camera in Linnea's bag buzzed to life, the cracked screen flickering as it played a new video. A concrete room. The real Linnea Hale strapped to a chair, electrodes snaking from her temples to a machine labeled Memory Graft V4.1. Voss adjusted the dials, his voice eerily cheerful. Don't worry, Subject Zero. We only need to harvest you one more time. Then the real Linnea spoke, her voice the same chilling echo Mira had used at the bridge. She's coming for you. The screen went black. Eli's fingers dug into Linnea's arm. We have to go, now. But Linnea was already moving, running toward the tree line where police lights still flashed in the distance. Because the final frame of the video had shown something else, a map, coordinates, and a single word carved into the real Linnea's arm, Blackwood. Chapter 16, The Town of Mirrors. The air hung heavy, sharp with pine and something sterner, formaldehyde, or maybe the electric snap of live wires burning in silence. Blackwood sprawled before them, a mirror image of the real town, down to the diner's peeling sign. But here, the windows were dark, streets swallowed by eerie emptiness. In the center, beneath a flickering lamppost, Mira stood, no hospital gown, but jeans and a sweater Linnea recognized. The same one from the photo at the bridge. You're not her, Eli whispered. Mira's smile didn't flicker. Not just her. Suddenly, the asphalt beneath their feet crumbled like dry leaves. Linnea's stomach flipped as she fell, not into shadows, but into blinding white light. The impact stole her breath, and when her vision cleared, she wished it hadn't. Rows upon rows of glass tanks filled the cavernous room, each one cradling amber liquid. And inside, dozens of herself. Silent sleepers, hair floating like seaweed in a still ocean. Some scarred, some hooked up to IVs. One near the front bore fresh stitches, skin puckered like a bad scar. Mira landed beside them, eyes catching the tank lights like a predator's gleam. Voss calls this the orchard. She pressed her palm against the nearest glass. He grows you when he needs parts. Linnea's knees buckled. Parts! Eli staggered to a control panel, fingers trembling over a screen listing vital signs. This one's tagged LH23, he gasped. That's you. The screen flickered to a live feed. Voss, surgical mask tight, bent over a woman on a cold table. The original Linnea, her chest split open like a lab specimen. Harvest the hippocampus first, he said, voice clinical. That's where she fights back. Mira's nails dug into Linnea's wrist. He's not just stealing memories, he's breeding obedience. She pointed at the last tank where Linnea floated, face serene, too perfect. The label read, perfected. Then the lights died. From the blackness came Voss's voice, smooth and cold as ice. Welcome home, Subject Zero. Chapter 17, The First Fracture. The scream wasn't human. It tore through the vents above, wet, guttural, like a throat ripped raw from screaming too long. Linnea's skin crawled as something heavy dragged itself through the ductwork, its breath hitching between creaks of cold metal. Eli's hand closed tight around a fallen scalpel, face drained of color under the flickering red emergency lights. That's not her. Mira's eyes stayed calm. No, she said. It's the first one who got loose. The fresh blood smeared on the wall glistened under the crimson glow. You should have killed me when you had the chance. Jagged handwriting, desperate, raw, and unmistakably hers. A thunderous crash echoed from the far end of the lab. Glass exploded as one tank shattered, amber liquid flooding the floor, then another, and another. They were waking up. Linnea stumbled back as a hand shot out from the nearest tank. LH-12, clawing at air before grabbing her wrist like a wild animal. The clone's eyes snapped open, lips peeling back into a silent snarl. Run, the clone mouthed. Then a sickening crack snapped her head sideways, and her body went limp. Voss stepped from the shadows, remote in hand, calm as a surgeon. Tsk, defective, he sneered. Pressing a button, the tank electrified, jolting the clone's convulsing body. But you, His gaze drilled into Linnea. You're my masterpiece. The vent above groaned. A figure dropped down, landing in a crouch. The original Linnea Hale. Her skin was gray. Sedation had stolen her color. Her hair matted with dried blood where her scalp had been stapled back together. But her eyes were wide awake and burning with fury. Voss actually smiled. Ah, Subject Zero. Without hesitation, the original lunged, not at Voss, but at Mira, fingers wrapping tight around her throat. You let him do this, she rasped. Mira didn't resist. She just whispered, I know. Then she plunged a syringe into the original's neck. The room exploded into chaos. Chapter 18. The Voss Variations. The emergency exit slid open to reveal a second chamber. Smaller, tighter, but infinitely more fucked up. Rows of upright tanks lined the walls like some twisted family portrait gallery. Inside each floated a limp, slack-jointed Voss clone. Some looked younger, some older. One had half its face melted away like a horror show gone wrong. The labels beneath them were as clinical as they were chilling. Voss 1.0, Voss 5.2 Behavioral Template, Voss 12.0 Termination Protocol. The current Voss 23.0 backed toward the door, his usual cold calm cracking like thin ice. You weren't supposed to see this, he spat. Mira wiped blood from her lip, eyes locked on the original Linnea convulsing on the floor. He's been grafting himself too, she said. Every few years he upgrades. The old models? Well, she kicked a drain clogged with dark hair. You can guess? Eli choked out a sound somewhere between a sob and a curse. That's why he wanted the real Linnea, a fresh template. The clones in the main lab were screaming now, their voices blending into one horrid, ear-splitting note. Glass shattered as more tanks exploded open. Voss 23 lunged for a control panel, but the original Linnea moved faster. She was a wild storm of stained hospital gown and matted hair, her fingers digging into the scar behind his ear, the exact same mark all the clones had. You're just another copy, she hissed, ripping the flesh apart. The sickening sound of tearing flesh got swallowed by blaring alarms. Voss 23 screamed. No pain, only raw terror, as Linnea peeled back a flap of skin to reveal a serial number. Voss 24.0. Mira grabbed Linnea's arm tight. The real Voss is here, somewhere, and if we don't burn this place to ashes before he wakes up... A new voice sliced through the chaos. Oh, I'm already awake. The lights died. When they blinked back on, he stood framed in the doorway, older, softer around the edges, but that same fucking shark smile. The original Dr. Daniel Voss. And behind him, strapped to a gurney, another Mira, fresh, unbroken, ready for harvest. Chapter 19. The Harvest. The clones moved like a single nightmarish hive mind. Linnea's, Voss's, even the fresh Mira, snapped their heads to the original Voss's command, pupils swallowing their irises until their eyes were black holes of obedience. Kill them. The command hissed from a dozen throats, Linnea's own voice bouncing back at her in a warped, sick chorus. Eli yanked her behind a toppled lab table just as the first wave lunged. One clone, LH9 time, her face a twisted mirror of Linnea's, radiated mindless rage and slammed against the metal barrier, claws scraping like desperate rats. Mira didn't flinch. She ripped a fire axe from the wall and swung it down in one brutal arc. LH9's head thudded wetly onto the floor. The original Voss sighed. Disappointment thick in his tone. Violence was never your strong suit, Mira. He tapped a dial on his wristwatch, and the remaining clones jerked, their motions sharpening, tighter. But obedience? That I perfected. The original Linnea Subject Zero stood frozen, trembling, hands pressed tight to her temples. They're in my head, she rasped, all of them. Then she screamed, not pain, but pure, unfiltered fury, and the sound shattered every remaining tank. Amber fluid spilled across the floor as the clones crumpled, writhing, black eyes rolling back like puppets losing strings. Voss's watch sparked, then died. For the first time, real fear flickered across his face. Impossible, he breathed. Subject Zero staggered upright, blood dripping from her nose. You idiot, she spat. You thought grafting memories would make them yours? Teeth bared like a wolf. But you forgot. I was the first. And I remember everything. Behind her, the gurney strap snapped. The new Mira sat up, eyes clear, voice sharp as a blade, including where you hid the real Blackwood facility. The original Voss backed up, right into Eli's scalpel. It slid between his ribs with a soft, sickening shit. Funny, Eli murmured, twisting the blade. You always said pain was the best teacher. Chapter 20. The first Linnea. The fall dragged on like an eternity. Linnea hurtled through the void, the screams of the others fading like distant echoes lost in the dark. Then, impact. But it wasn't cold concrete greeting her, it was glass. Cold, curved, humming with unseen machinery. She rolled onto her hands and knees, blinking as the world came into sharp focus. She was trapped inside a tank, and she wasn't alone. Rows upon rows of identical chambers stretched out into shadow, each containing a still figure, not clones. People, men, women, children, all suspended in amber fluid, faces serene, skulls wired to buzzing machines. Donors, a harvest of memories. At the room's center, perched on a twisted altar, stood the largest tank. Inside floated a woman, Linnea Hale, but not the Linnea she knew. Younger, softer around the edges, dark hair drifting like smoke in the golden liquid. The placard read, Memory capacity, 98% depleted. Status. Beside the tank, a screen flickered on, showing grainy security footage from 15 years ago. A teenage Linnea stepped into a clinical building, Voss's clinic. The footage skipped. Now she was strapped down. Now she screamed. Now she was empty. The screen went black. Then new words burned across it. Project Mirror complete. All memories successfully transferred to host lane M. Linnea's breath hitched in ragged gasps. Mirror lane. She had never been the original. She was the recipient. Suddenly, the glass above her shattered. Eli and the others burst through, their voices distant and distorted. But Linnea's eyes stayed locked on the tank. The first Linnea. The girl erased to make room for her. And then, the original's eyes snapped open. She smiled. Every end's just a freaking door cracking open to the next damn mystery. Thanks for vibing with Mysteries Unveiled by Dino. Catch you on the flip. Keep that story burning bright. No cap.